afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Wednesday. Yom Revi. Who's in the house? Yehuda in South Carolina, Paul in the Great Northwest, Sharon in New Jersey, Bill in Missouri, Stephen in New Hampshire, Bella in Florida, Joe in the Inland Empire, Shandor in the Bronx, Lorraine in Texas, Melissa in Great Neck, Ella's with us, Marjorie in Georgia. Let's light up the darkness. Short daf. Let's be efficient. Our page today is page 30, daf Lamed, here in Tractate Bava Basra, the 23rd volume of the Talmud. Continuing our discussion of Mishna number 1 here in chapter 3, establishing a chazaka, presumptive ownership of a piece of real property by somebody who is living there or profiting from it, either renting it out or farming the field or using the olive press, etc., for 3 years. Now, if somebody shows up and says, hey, that's my land, you're on it illegally, since this person has occupied it for 3 years, the claimant, the one who shows up and says, no, that's my land, you have no right to be there, he has the burden of proof. If he shows up, less than 3 years, then it's, and we know that it was his land before, then the one who's living in it will have the burden of proof to show that he purchased it legally. But after 3 years, the presumption of ownership exists for the possessor, and now the claimant will have the burden of proof. Okay, we pick this up near the bottom of page 29b with a series of incidents, very real-world situations, where someone was in possession of a piece of property, a claimant showed up and said, you have no right to be there, and they litigate. The Gemara relates, there was a certain person who said to another, what do you want? I.e., what are you doing with this house of mine? What are you doing in my house? Right? That's the question. And the other said to him, I purchased it from you, and I worked and profited from it for the years necessary to establish the chazaka, the presumption of ownership. So the claimant said to him, I was among the distant settlements and was unaware that you were residing in my house, which is why I did not lodge a protest. So the one residing in the house came before Rav Nachman for a judgment. And Rav Nachman said to him, go clarify your profiting, i.e., prove that you really resided there for 3 years, and then the case can be judged. Rava said to Rav Nachman, is this the correct judgment? The law is that the burden of proof rests upon the claimant. Therefore, the one who's attempting to take the house from the possessor should have to prove that the other did not reside in the house. We said that if you are living there continuously for 3 years, okay, so then the burden of proof is on the other one. But that's only if you've been living there for 3 years. What if you haven't been living there for 3 years? Presumably, the one who's been living there for 3 years needs to prove that he was living there for 3 years. Then the other one will have the burden of proof that what? That it was an illegal purchase at the beginning, that you weren't there for 3 years, etc. But, is it enough to just say, hey, I've been here for 3 years? It sounds like for Rav Nachman, yes. For Rava, no. So let's keep reading. So Rav Nachman says, prove that you've been here for 3 years. And Rava says, well, no, all burden of litigation is on the one who comes to claim that the house is his. Now, the Gemara raises a contradiction between this statement of Rava and another statement of Rava, and it also raises a contradiction between this statement of Rav Nachman and another statement of Rav Nachman. In other words, the sages who are holding these views in this incident seem to hold different views in a different incident. And what was that? As there was a certain person, now we're on page 30a, who said to another, I am hereby selling you all of the property that I own of the house of Barsissin. Now, there was a certain parcel of land that was called of the house of Barsissin. So the seller said to the buyer, this parcel of land that I own is not actually of the house of Bar Sisson. It is merely called of the house of Bar Sisson, and it is not included in the sale. So they came before Rav Nachman for judgment, and he established the land in possession of the buyer. And Rava said to Rav Nachman, is this the law? Isn't the law that the burden of proof rests upon the claimant, and the land should remain in the possession of the seller? And the Gemara continues, and there's a difficulty from one statement of Rava to another statement of Rava, and there's also a difficulty from one statement of Rav Nachman to another statement of Rav Nachman. How so? In the first case, where the claimant states that he had been in a distant location, and that's why he didn't lodge a protest during these 3 years, Rav Nachman ruled in favor of the claimant, and Rava ruled in favor of the possessor. While in the second case, that of the property of Bar Sisson, their opinions seem to be reversed. And the Gemara answers the contradiction between one statement of Rava and another of Rava is actually not difficult. Because there, in the case of this property called the property of Bar Sisson, the seller had been established as having the land in his property, which is why Rava rules in his favor. But here, in the case where the claimant states that he had been in a distant location, the buyer is established as having the house in his property, and that's why the claimant, in other words, we always generally have the principle that if somebody's coming to court and wants something, wants to remove money or property from the one who's holding it, well, the claimant, the plaintiff, this is the one who has the burden of proof. And that seems to be consistent for the two statements of Rava. And likewise, the seeming contradiction between one statement of Rav Nachman and another statement of Rav Nachman is also not difficult, because there, since the seller said to him, I am hereby selling you all of the property that I own of the house of Bar Sisson, and this parcel of land is called of the house of Bar Sisson, so it is incumbent on him to reveal that the parcel under dispute is not of the house of Bar Sisson. But here, in the case where the claimant states that he had been in a distant location, it should not be any different from a case where the possessor is holding a document as evidence that he purchased a house. Wouldn't we say to him, first ratify your document and only then be established in the property? So in this case as well, his presumptive ownership is in place of a document, right, that he's been living there for 3 years. That replaces the document that we normally use as evidence that he is the owner of that property. So, okay, prove that you've been living there for 3 years. Then you have a presumption of ownership. And then the other guy, if he wants to take it away from you, will have to prove that you never acquired it legally. That the burden of proof will be on him. But for the presumption of ownership to rest with you, you have to prove that you've been living there for 3 years. And so Rav Nachman is being consistent. Now, there was a certain person, so new incident. There was a certain person who said to another, what do you want with this house of mine? And the possessor said to him, I purchased it from you, and I worked and profited from it for the years necessary to establish the presumption of ownership. So this is mine. You want to take it away from me? You have to prove it. The claimant said to him, I was in the outer marketplaces. Similar story to the previous one that we started with. But instead of saying I was in the distant settlements, he's saying I was in the outer marketplaces. And I was unaware that you were residing in my house, and therefore I did not lodge a protest. So your profiting from it does not establish the presumption of ownership. The possessor, right, the one in possession of the land, said to him, but I have witnesses that every year you would come here for 30 days, and so you had an opportunity to know that I was residing in your house and to lodge a protest. You didn't lodge a protest, so it must be that you didn't object. I was in possession for 3 years. Now I am the presumed owner, and if you want to dislodge me, you have to prove that I didn't acquire it legally. The claimant said to him, I was occupied with my business in the marketplaces for those 30 days, so I'm a traveling salesman. Maybe I was in this region for 30 days each of those 3 years, but when I was here, I wasn't looking up, who's living in this house that I own. I was doing business, so I had no idea that there was somebody living in my house. that I thought was sitting empty. Rava said, a person is apt to be occupied with business in the marketplace for all 30 days. And Rava accepted his claim. He didn't lose his right to the land because he didn't object, because he was busy and he had no reason to know that someone was living in his house that he thought was empty. New incident. There was a certain person who said to another, what do you want with this land of mine? And the possessor said to him, I purchased it not from you, but I purchased it from so-and-so. And so told me that he purchased it from you. The claimant said to him, well then, don't you concede that this land was formerly mine? You said you bought it from somebody who bought it from me, so you admit that this land used to belong to me, and you also admit that you didn't purchase it from me. Well, I never sold this land to anyone. The person who says they bought it from me and sold it to you is a liar. This is my land. Get off. And not only that, he says, go away. I am not legally answerable to you. And Rava said that the claimant stated the law to the possessor as this is a legitimate claim. And Rava accepted his claim. Right? You concede that the land used to be mine. You concede that you didn't buy it from me. You claim that you bought it from so-and-so. Well, go talk to so-and-so and bring the evidence that it was legally purchased from me. Until then, get off my land. And Rav accepted the claim. We're on page 30b now. There was a certain person who said to another, what do you want with this land of mine? And the possessor said to him, I purchased it from so-and-so, and then I worked and profited from it for the years necessary to establish a presumption of ownership. This is a different case because he never said that so-and-so said they bought it from you, right? He just says, I bought it from so-and-so. This is my land. I've been here for enough years. The claimant said to him, so-and-so is a robber who robbed me of the field, and he did not have the authority to sell it to you. The possessor said to him, but I have witnesses that I came and I consulted with you, and you said to me, go purchase the land, indicating that you conceded that he had authority to sell it. The claimant said to him, the reason that I advised you to purchase it was because the second person, meaning you, the person who's currently in possession of the land, is amenable to me, while the first, i.e. the purported thief, is more difficult than he. In other words, I prefer to litigate with you rather than with that guy who robbed my land. And Rava said, the claimant stated the law to the possessor. This is a legitimate claim. And Rava accepted his claim. Now, this is a pretty startling outcome and a startling case. So think about this. I own a piece of land, and who comes to town? Let's say that this is a piece of land within the Roman Empire, and a Roman centurion comes and says to, another guy that I know, says, that land, I'll sell it to you. Now that guy says, yeah, but that's Sal's land. And the Roman centurion says, no, it's my land and I can sell it to you. Do you want to buy it? Yes or no? So that guy says, well, hold on a second. He comes over to me and he says, should I buy, is it all right for me to buy this land from that Roman centurion? And I say to him, yeah, buy the land from the Roman centurion. So now he's thinking, okay, well, it must be that Sal sold the land to the Roman centurion. So now he buys the land from the Roman centurion. The Roman pockets this money. He leaves town. And now I say, yeah, that land is mine. I never sold it to the centurion, and I want it back. And so this guy says, well, wait a minute, Sal, you told me that I'm okay to buy it from the Roman centurion. And I say, yeah, because what am I going to do with the Roman centurion? I'm not able to bring him to court. This guy has the power of the empire behind him. I would just lose. But with you, you're my fellow Jew, I can take you to court and get my money back. I can get my land back. So that's what I did. Kind of strategic thinking, given the reality of the situation. Now, I probably could have, maybe should have handled it a different way, But you can see how people in times of crisis, particularly under an oppressive regime, stuff happens. Because the actual law is, I never sold the land to the Roman. When this guy says, should I buy it from the Roman? What did I say? I said, yeah, buy it from the Roman. I didn't say I sold it to the Roman. All I said was, yeah, buy it from the Roman. This guy went ahead. He didn't get the assurance that he should have had. He didn't bring a lawyer into a purchase and sale of land transaction like he should have, right? So not doing your due diligence, never a good idea when buying and selling property. So let's see what happened here. Rava said the claimant stated the correct law to the possessor, and that's why Rava accepted the claim. Now, the Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion is Rava's statement? Because it definitely seems like a more complex transaction. And are you really, Rava? Are you sure that that's the right outcome? So the Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion is Rava? Is it in accordance with the opinion of Admon? As we learned in a Mishna, Tractate Kesubos 109a, with regard to one who contests ownership of a field, claiming that a field possessed by someone else actually belongs to him, and the claimant himself signed as a witness on the bill of sale of that other person, Admon says his signature does not disprove his claim of ownership of the property, as it is possible that the claimant said to himself, the second person is amenable to me to deal with as I can reason with him, while the first owner who sold the field to the current possessor is more difficult to deal with than he, like this Roman centurion. And the rabbis say, the majority opinion, no, he lost his right to contest. Now that's a different case, right? That's if he comes to me and he says, Sal, is it okay to buy this land from the Roman? And I say, isn't it your land, Sal? And I say, yeah, it's okay to buy it. Now he's smart. He says, okay, Sal, if it's okay for me to buy it, you sign my purchase and sale deed that I'm buying this land from the Romans. Sal, you sign it as a witness. Now, if I sign that deed as a witness, then I have conceded that I don't have a claim to that land. Otherwise, what am I doing? Signing a false deed as a witness. When I do that, I concede any rights that I had in that land. That's the majority opinion. But that's if I sign it as a witness, not if I simply say, yeah, go ahead and buy, which will produce a better outcome for me. So the Gemara explains, you may even say that Rava's ruling is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. There, in the case of the Mishna and Tractate Kesubos, by signing the bill of sale, the claimant performed an action indicating that the field was not his for the benefit of the possessor of the field. But here in Rava's case, there was no action. I didn't sign a deed as a witness. There was only speech. Yeah, go ahead, buy it. And a person is apt to casually say statements, and he does not lose his legal rights by virtue of saying, yeah, go ahead and buy it. Right? That wasn't me admitting that that guy stole my land, or I'm conceding that he took it properly or anything like that. That my rights are not affected by me saying to him, yeah, go ahead and buy it, because I know it's going to be better for me if he's holding it than if the Roman is holding it. Next story. There was a certain person who said to another, what do you want with this land of mine? And the possessor said to him, I purchased it from so-and-so, and then I worked and profited from it for the years necessary to establish a presumption of ownership. And the claimant said to him, so-and-so is a robber who robbed me of the field, and he did not have the authority to sell it to you. The possessor said to him, but I have witnesses that you came to me at night and you said to me, sell it to me, indicating that it is not your land, as if it were yours, you would have demanded that I return it to you without paying for it. Why were you telling me to sell it to you if it was really your land? And the claimant said to him, well, I said to myself, let me purchase the benefit of avoiding my litigation in order to reclaim my land. It might be cheaper for me to just buy it back after it was stolen from me than to have to take you to court and get into a whole expensive litigation. And Rava said a person is apt to pay money to purchase the benefit of avoiding his litigation, even though it was legally his to begin with. Now, that's pretty interesting, right? We've seen cases, we don't have to get involved in names or anything like that, but for example, where someone in the public space says, I will pay a newspaper to kill a story so that it doesn't get out there. And everybody else says, well, it must be true, that's why you were paying to squash it. And I'm like, no, I was paying to squash it because I can't deal with the bad publicity. I'm not admitting that I did anything. Likewise, somebody, like in this case, my car gets stolen. And then I get a chance to buy it back. Now, I know that there's something very special about this car. So, the thief sold it to someone else as a stolen car. That person's offering to sell it to me. And I can get the car back, for a fraction of what it's really worth. And even though it's my car, I might spend the money just to avoid the hassle of having to litigate, getting it back, etc. It doesn't mean that because I purchased back something that was stolen from me that I admit it's not mine. It just means it's worth it to me to avoid the hassle of litigation. Later, when I have an opportunity to make an accusation against the actual thief, or when I need to pay, for it, or something like that, when the actual rubber hits the road, I will say, hey, this was mine, it was stolen from me, but it never ceased being mine, and the fact that I offered to pay for it does not in any way contradict the fact that it was mine. I offered to pay for it because I wanted to avoid a hassle. Very, very real world types of issues, and I would say not, relevant only in ancient times. This is the kind of stuff that goes on today. And I think there's a great takeaway here, right? Where somebody tells you, hey, logically speaking, if it wasn't like this, it would have been like that. And the logic sounds good, but when you take into account how people actually think and act, that explanation is not the only explanation, right? A friend of mine served on a jury. It was a criminal matter, right? And so the accused was charged with some crime. And what the jury was told by the judge is if you can come up with another story that matches these facts, then the story that the prosecutor is presenting, and it's equally likely that this other story, right, in which the defendant is innocent, but all the same evidence and circumstances would apply, then that would be a reasonable doubt, and you have to exonerate the accused. And so likewise, we shouldn't be quick to jump to accept somebody else's version of events, when with just a little bit of putting on our thinking caps, we could come up with a totally different story that matches the evidence. Then we shouldn't, then we should realize that the evidence is the story that's being presented to us to explain why the evidence is here may or may not be true, right? May or may not be true. Take it with a grain of salt. Where was I? Yes, a person is apt to pay money to purchase the benefit of avoiding litigation. Next story. There was a certain person who said to another, "What do you want with this land of mine?" The possessor said to him, "I purchased it from so-and-so. I worked and profited from it for the years necessary to establish a presumption of ownership." In this case, indicating that he possessed it for 3 years, as this is the minimum number of years required for establishing the presumption of ownership. Now, the claimant said, "But I am holding a document stating that I purchased it from the seller 4 years ago. Therefore, if it was sold to you 3 years ago, as you claim, then the person who sold it to you did not have the authority to sell it to you because it was my land that I bought 4 years ago." The possessor, the one who's on the property, said to him, do you maintain that when I said I profited from the land for the years necessary for establishing the presumption of ownership, that I was saying I worked and profited from the land for exactly 3 years? What I was saying was that I worked and profited from the land for many years. And those many years established the presumption of ownership, but it was more than 4 years ago that I bought the land. I bought the land 7 years ago. I've been here for 7 years. You saying that you bought the land 4 years ago doesn't negate my presumption of ownership. And Rava said, it is common for people to refer to many years as the years necessary for establishing the presumption of ownership. That doesn't mean that he's claiming he was only there for 3 years. In fact, he says he was here for 7 years. Maybe he can bring witnesses to that effect. And Rava accepted the claim. I am very close to done. If you've got questions or comments, get them in now. As I said, a short daf. Now the Gemara comments, and this matter, that somebody's saying, I've been here for the years necessary, could mean more than 3 years. The Gemara comments, and this matter applies only if he profited from the land for 7 years, so that the presumptive ownership of the possessor preceded the document of that claimant. But if he profited from the land for only 6 years, so that the sale to the claimant took place before the years necessary for establishing the presumption of ownership were completed, then you can have no greater protest than this, that the purported seller then sold the land to another. And by doing so, he indicated that he does not concede that the possessor was the rightful owner, and the possessor should have been careful to hold on to his bill of sale for even longer than 3 years. And we're at the top of page 31a, and that's where we'll pick it up, God willing, tomorrow. Slight chance that tomorrow's class will be late. As of now, it shouldn't be. If anything changes, I'll put, that we'll delay it by an hour or something. I'll post that on the Facebook page. But like I said, slight chance. As of now, the plan is certainly normal time tomorrow. Okay. Sharon question. Question about music at this time. Is it the 3 weeks or only the last 9 days where listening to music is restricted? Only live music or only music with instruments or all music? My past rabbi said all music, all 3 weeks. He has since passed and I have not heard a different opinion since. My understanding is that the 3 weeks are like counting the Omer. We should not be listening to live music at all. We shouldn't be listening even to recorded music with voices. Some opinions say that we shouldn't be listening to instrumental music. Some people say that you can listen to a cappella music. I misspoke. Some people say that you can listen to a cappella music during this period, the 3 weeks between 17 Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. But there are definitely a little bit of variety of the opinions. As always, best to consult with your local Orthodox rabbi, with your own Rav. But definitely a good source for these kinds of questions is the OU. So if you just Google OU, music, 3 weeks, that's a kind of very, mainline opinion that you'll get there. Nina's writing to me that a cappella is a minority opinion and it must be sad, i.e. not something that you can dance to. Something consistent with the mourning, mourning, that we're in a time of mourning, and something consistent with that mourning so that we can, keep reminding ourselves that of what we lost when we lost the Holy Temple. And that we're still in mourning for it. Bill, I have to say, I find the traveling salesman who didn't check on a house he owned for 3 years, even when he was in the area for 30 days each year, to be, to say the least, less credible than the defendant. While it's the custom of a merchant to be focused on business in the marketplace, people are particular about real estate. If he disregarded the house so much he didn't check on whether the tenant had trashed it, or more likely, he dodged his duties as a landlord to make necessary repairs, then he clearly didn't regard the house as any weighty matter before now. Bill, I might be swayed by your version of this if he owns one house that he lives in, somewhere else, and he has this one house here in this region, and you would think that he would have checked on it while he was in town. But what if he owns 10 houses and 5 of them are around here and he doesn't go check them all out? That, I think, would make it different, right? That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow at the regular time, God willing, 6 p.m. Pacific. If there's any change to that, I'll post it on the Facebook page, later in the afternoon tomorrow. All the best.